Good afternoon and welcome to the Project Success ISTAR Alternate Assessment Overview. My name is Meredith Keating-Mark and I will be taking you through today's PowerPoint. You may reach Project Success through projectsuccessindiana.com. On today's agenda, we will be giving an introduction to the Project Success website, staff, supports, and resources, as well as an overview of the alternate assessment. Some of the portions that we're going to discuss on the alternate assessment include website resources, the transition of the Indiana alternate assessment over the last few years, as well as the alternate assessment timeline and testing windows. And lastly, we'll be discussing and reviewing the resources for guidance and instruction of the alternate assessment, including the instructional guidance documents and the test blueprints. By the end of today's time together, we want you to be able to identify and locate websites to provide yourself with additional guidance and support for the alternate assessment. Understand an overview of the ISTAR alternate assessment, including the testing windows and the assessment timeline. We also want you to be able to describe the ISTAR resources for guidance and instruction. We will give you an overview of the instructional guidance document and test blueprint to help you out with that. We also want you to be able to analyze your need within your district to be able to determine if the additional support is necessary. And if so, we want you to reach out to the Project Success staff. As we proceed today, much of what we will discuss is on the Project Success website, which is www.projectsuccessindiana.com. On this website, we have an overview of Project Success, ways to contact the staff, frequently asked questions, as well as archived events, which include former training that Project Success staff have done, as well as some resources to help you out. What is Project Success? Project Success is part of the Indiana Resource Network, and we continue to build teams and to support teams of teachers and administrators in Indiana as they work to implement academic standards into instruction for students with significant disabilities. We include current and research-based resources related to the content standards, instructional design, and student outcomes, with the biggest idea being that we're specifically designing instruction and trainings to meet the needs of students with significant disabilities. You can always find us at our website at www.projectsuccessindiana.com. How you can contact us: Amy Howie is the Director of Project Success, and her email is ahowie@pcgus.com. And myself, Meredith Keating-Mark, my email is mkeatingmark@pcgus.com. And there's an example there of how you can get a hold of us. Additionally, you're going to want to know where to go to get additional information. I wanted to highlight that on Thursday, September 24th, Karen Stein will be giving an overview of the ISTAR alternate assessment. Some of the information that will be included on that overview on the 24th include the development of ISTAR item types and the built-in tools, accommodations, and students who with limited or no communication, rules, timelines for district test coordinators and district administrators. Also, on this training, there will be timelines and access for the practice test, ISTAR and accountability, as well as test security information. Again, this will be provided by the Indiana Department of Education on Thursday, September 24th. You can check Learning Connection, especially the ISTAR alternate assessment community, for updates. Additionally, here are some other websites that can help you out as you begin to work towards this ISTAR alternate assessment. The first one is the Indiana Department of Education. Their link there to access the alternate assessment page is included right above here on our PowerPoint. Additionally, two other wonderful resources within that website link include the recorded video regarding the alternate assessment. It's within that testing update, 2015-2016 update. It includes an update on ISTAR within that recorded video. Additionally, they have uploaded the 2015-2016 assessment update. So that is just a PowerPoint that goes along with the video. So if you'd rather read it, there's that option as well. Both of those resources are within the Indiana Department of Education alternate assessment page on their website. The other resource that we have, of course, is Project Success. I've said the website a couple times, projectsuccessindiana.com. And this includes our support. So some of the things that we can do to help schools, teachers, districts out include curriculum mapping with those priority standards, those core content connectors or content connectors, standard-based lesson planning, support writing formative assessments for students with significant cognitive disabilities, and overall best practice for students with significant cognitive disabilities in regards to finding that balance between academic and functional skills. We know that that is a constant balance. How do we balance academic and functional skills? And we have some great trainings on that best practice, how to balance those two. And we also always provide support based on district need. We know that each district is different and at different levels, and we can provide training based on district need as well. The third website that is provided is the QuestStar website. QuestStar is the vendor for the ISTAR alternate assessment. Right there, the CTC link is how the CTC, those administrators can use this link to create accounts. And again, this will be included as part of that Thursday, September 24th information session with the Department of Education. The last link and website there is the Learning Connection link. One very important community to join within the Learning Connection communities is the ISTAR Alternate Assessment Community. That provides up-to-date information and announcements regarding the ISTAR assessment. Important details are added and announcements are added weekly. So it's important to check that website to join that ISTAR Alternate Assessment Community. So 4 great resources, 4 great websites: Indiana Department of Education, Project Success, QuestStar, and Learning Connection. So what is the purpose of the alternate assessment? The alternate assessment the purpose of it is designed to measure student achievement in the subject areas of English Language Arts, or ELA, mathematics, science, and social studies. And it is based on the alternate achievement standards, those content connectors. Students who are performing significantly below grade level may have their personalized learning goals that cannot be adequately measured through the grade level standardized tests. Therefore, the case conference committee determines the eligibility, which is, of course, based on the Indiana State Board of Education criteria and the individual needs of the student, and determine if the alternate assessment is the appropriate assessment to measure that student's achievement. So there is a link within the Department of Education's website, and the link is below. It's on the alternate achievement or the alternate assessment page that can guide you and provide more information on what is the purpose of the assessment. So you can check that out on their website. The alternate assessment has transitioned over the last few years. Prior to 2014 and 2015, Indiana used ISTAR, especially this was implemented in 2002 and 2003. The ISTAR in 2002 and 2003 was based on functional standards. and it was teacher rated and growth based. The two key components that stand out to me are growth based and teacher rated. So the teacher administered the test, rated the test, and it was based on student growth. In 2014 and 2015, last school year, Indiana implemented the NCSIC in English Language Arts and Mathematics. It was based on alternate achievement standards or core content connectors. Those are those connectors that connect the standard to the Indiana state standard. The NCSIC was a student response-based assessment, and it was based on the achievement of the student was based on their achievement of the standards. So it was a standard-based assessment. 2015 and beyond, we are using, within Indiana, the Indiana Standards Tools for Alternate Reporting, ISTAR. This assessment is based on the alternate achievement standards. It's student response. It measures the areas of English Language Arts, math, social studies, and science. So a bit of a change from 2014 and 2015. This school year, the ISTAR will measure English Language Arts, math, social studies, and science. This assessment will be administered in 3 windows: fall, winter, and spring. And I will break that down further for you in an advanced slide, but it's important to know that we will have 3 windows to the ISTAR alternate assessment. Those 3 windows will be a fall window, which is a placement window. It places the student at a tier, a winter, and a spring. Another important difference between the NCSIC and the ISTAR assessment is that your student will take a placement test in the fall, that first window, part 1, that will measure their level of complexity. It will put them in a tier. Tier 3 will be the most rigorous. It will have high, and medium level of complexity items. Tier 2 will have high, medium, and low levels of complexity. And Tier 1 will have low and medium levels of complexity. So after that fall placement test, your student will be placed into a tier. Tier 3 being the most rigorous, and Tier 1 having low and medium levels of complexity. And lastly, the assessment, the ISTAR assessment, will be a multiple choice online test platform, with that vendor being Questar. So just to recap the ISTAR alternate assessment, ISTAR stands for Indiana Standards Tools for Alternate Reporting, or ISTAR. It's based on the alternate achievement standards, or core content connectors. You might hear it referred to as core content connectors or content connectors. Those are those standards that link to the Indiana state standards. The ISTAR is a student response assessment. The Department of Education will be placing out more information on Thursday, the 24th, about that. And you can check their website for more information. The ISTAR will also be assessing 4 areas of academics: English Language Arts, math, social studies, and science. The assessment will be administered in 3 windows: fall, winter, and spring, and will be using the fall part 1 assessment as a placement test, placing the student in a level of complexity tier. So there will be 3 levels of complexity within this assessment. And lastly, this assessment, ISTAR, will be a multiple choice online test. This brings us to the 3 testing windows: part 1, part 2, and part 3. Remember, ISTAR in ELA and math will be in grades 3 through 8 and 10, as well as science and social studies in their assigned grades. ISTAR Part 1, that window is open from October 5th, 2015 to November 6, 2015. And once again, Part 1 is a placement test for students. Now we'll break that down for you in the next couple of slides. But Part 1 in October 5th to November 6th. The Part 2 assessment will be open from January 11th to February 5th. That's the window of the assessment. And Part 3, April 11th through May 20th. And that is, of course, in 2016. That is the spring assessment. So 3 different testing windows. Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. So let's break this down a little bit further. The first testing window, Part 1, is that placement test. It's based on standards that would have been taught in the fall. And I will show you where you can go to find those standards as we continue today's activity. But placement test 1, Part 1, is based on the standards that should have been taught in the fall. It determines that student placement into Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. Tier 3 having high, medium, leveled items. Tier 2 having high, medium, and low level of complexity items. And Tier 1, low and medium levels of complexity. You can see that once they take that placement test, then that placement test determines their student placement into which tier is most appropriate for that individual student. Trained test administrators will provide a one-on-one test administration of the multiple choice items using an online test platform. And that will be approximately 10 questions for each subject. This first Part 1 placement test does not impact accountability. It is simply to determine the student's placement into their tier. Part 2, the second test administration, window 2, is based on standards that should have been taught in the fall and winter. It's, once again, the trained test administrator provides a one-to-one test administration of those multiple choice and technology-enhanced items using the online test platform. And student results will affect accountability. So that's the biggest difference between Part 1 and Part 2. The first Part 1 is that placement test. It determines the student's placement into the appropriate tier for that individual student. Part 2, that second test administration, is based on standards that should have been taught in the fall and winter, and the student results are used for accountability. And that brings us to Part 3, the spring test administration. The spring test is based on standards that should have been taught in the fall and winter. Once again, the trained test administrators provide that one-to-one test administration on those multiple choice and technology-enhanced items using the online test platform. And student results are used for accountability in Part 3. So similar to Part 2, student results are used for accountability in Part 2. In Part 3, the spring test, student results are used also for accountability. A few other reminders, the English language arts and math assessments are assessed in grades 3 through grade 8, as well as grade 10 in Indiana. Science is assessed in grades 4, 6, and 10, and social studies is assessed in grades 5 and 7. So throughout this, you are probably wondering how Project Success can assist with the implementation of the standards as well as best practice in the classroom. And once again, Project Success, we work with curriculum mapping with those priority standards, which I will show you how to read those standards next. We do standard-based lesson planning, so starting with that standard in mind and planning the lesson in regards to that standard and that student's individual learning area. as well as how to create that balanced curriculum in both academic and functional skills. And that's probably the area that we get the most questions about. How do we take these standards and create a balanced curriculum with both the academic skills that the students are expected to be able to perform, as well as keeping in mind those functional needs, those functional skills. So Project Success can help you with anything from curriculum mapping to standard-based planning to finding that balance between the academic and functional skills. Let's talk a little bit about how to read the ISTAR priority standards. Once again, these standards you're going to find those on the Indiana Department of Education website under alternate assessments. The link is provided within this PowerPoint, which we will be uploading this WebEx as well as the PowerPoint on our website after today. So it is important to know how to read these priority standards, and in order to read the priority standards, we need to understand the code that is used with these. So you'll see our bullseye here. In the middle, we have Check Plus, which represents the critical content. Check Plus represents critical content. You'll see that Check Plus aligned to standards. So we know that that is critical content that is likely to be on the ISTAR assessment. The check mark in the yellow is important content that the student needs to know and be exposed to. So Check Plus, critical content. Check is the important content. And then we have the clipboard. And the clipboard is additional content that is important for the student to be aware of and know. But that important content can be assessed in the classroom. So if you see the clipboard, it is a skill that can be assessed in the classroom. So Check Plus is critical content, the check mark is important content, and the clipboard is additional content that may be assessed in the classroom. And this, once again, is found on the Indiana Department of Education website under alternate assessments. One very important place that you can go to get some guidance on which standards are assessed and what that standard's priority is, whether it's the Check Plus, that critical content, the check, that very important content, or the clipboard, that content that needs to be assessed in the classroom. One important place to go is the Instructional and Assessment Guidance Form. And you can find this on the Indiana Department of Education's website under the alternate assessment. This is actually an example of what you would see. So you're going to see English Language Arts, Math, Science, and Social Studies, as well as the grades that they are assessed in. The first line here, I'll highlight that for you, the English Language Arts. This is the Instructional and Assessment Guidance Form, which we'll go onto on the next slide, but it breaks down the standards and their priority for each grade level. Grades 3 through 8 and 10 in English Language Arts, Math 3 through 8 and 10, Science 4, 6, and 10, and Social Studies grades 5 and 7. So it breaks down which standards are going to be on the assessment as well as the level of priority. So we will see those symbols again, the Check Plus, the check, and the clipboard. And then with equal importance below this are the actual content connectors. And those are the standards. And I will also show you those today. If you're in the Indiana Department of Education website under alternate assessment, you will see the instructional and assessment guidance document, which is right here. And this breaks down which standards will be assessed. And if you click on the one right below it, that includes the actual standards aligned to the Indiana standards for each subject and each grade level. So it's really important to be able to log on to the Indiana Department of Education's website and to be able to find those instructional and assessment guidance forms. And this is what it looks like on the front of the Department of Education's website. So with that being said, I pulled out an instructional and assessment guidance form for English Language Arts, grade 3. And you're going to see some very familiar symbols within this guidance document. This is on, once again, the Department of Education Alternate Assessment website. When you click on the instructional and assessment guidance form, this is what you will see. This is just the grade 3 example. There is an example for every grade and every subject. When you look up here at the top, you're going to see those symbols that we discussed earlier. The check plus being that critical knowledge, the content priority is critical. It's a critical standard. It's going to be on the ISTAR test. So you'll see that possible ISTAR question, yes. If it's a check plus, it's critical, and yes. The check mark is very important information, and yes, it is possible ISTAR question. So check plus is critical, and yes, it's a possible ISTAR question. The check mark is important, and yes, it is a possible ISTAR question. And then, as we discussed previously, the clipboard is the additional information that will not be assessed on the ISTAR assessment, but should be assessed within the classroom. So when you see a standard with a clipboard beside it, you know that it's an additional standard that you can assess within the classroom. It will not be on the ISTAR assessment. So looking at the guidance document further, you're going to see up at the top the subject level that you're working with, so English Language Arts, as well as the standards within their strands. So reading foundations, reading literature, nonfiction, vocabulary, writing, speaking and listening, and media literacy. You are likely to see that the media literacy and the speaking and listening are those standards that can be assessed within the classroom. On the left-hand column, you're going to see the Indiana State Standard. And on the right-hand column, the level of priority that that standard has. Left-hand column, the Indiana State Standard. And in the right-hand column, you're going to see that level of priority. This is just a quick glance of what will be on the assessment and which standards will be assessed. So looking at the content priority at the top, the symbols, and looking at it within each, beside each standard, you can tell what is the level of priority for each of the standards. Broken down just a little bit further in a mathematic example for you. This is grade 6, broken down into the different mathematical strands. So we have number sense, computation, for example, and then broken down in the left-hand column with the Indiana State Standard and the priority of that standard to the right of that standard. You can see that we have priority, critical content, as well as the clipboards, which are those additional content that can be assessed in the classroom. So this is a very transparent way to look at each strand and to determine what is that level of priority. And Project Success can help you break down each area and determine how is the best process to start teaching and working with these standards. Because when you look at it in the instructional guidance document, it can be extremely overwhelming. So that's something that Project Success can help you with, is breaking down those standards into level of priority and start some of that standard-based lesson plans or some of those curriculum maps to get started on how to teach and when to teach each of these standards. So this is a 6th grade math example. One of my favorite documents on the Indiana Department of Education's alternate assessment website is the actual content connectors and their alignment to the Indiana standards. So what you will see underneath each of the instructional and guidance document forms on the Department of Education's website, you will see a link right below it to the content connectors. The content connectors are aligned to the Indiana academic standards, and they are what the standards in which the ISTAR assessment was based. They are aligned to the Indiana academic standards, but they are broken down further and simplified a bit to help students with significant disabilities. This is a grade 3 mathematics example. So in the left-hand column, we have the Indiana state standards, the Indiana academic standard, and in the right-hand column, that standard is broken down into the content connectors. So Indiana academic standard in the left, broken down one step further is the content connectors. And as you can see, the Indiana standard reads that the student will read and write whole numbers up to 10,000 using words, models, in the standard form as well as expanded form to represent and show equivalent forms of whole numbers up to 10,000. And the content connector breaks it down a bit further and makes it a little bit more simplified for students taking the ISTAR assessment. So the content connector for 3NS1 reads that the student will read, demonstrate, and write whole numbers up to 200. So it's broken down, but yet still aligned to the Indiana academic standard. The content connectors are an important place to look at when you start to look at what your students need to know for the ISTAR alternate assessment. Another really important area to look at is the windows or the parts that standard is assessed. So 3NS1, read, demonstrate, and write whole numbers up to 200, is going to be tested in Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3 of the ISTAR assessment. So it will be in Part 1, it will be on that placement test, it will be on the winter test, Part 2, and it will be on the spring test, Part 3. So this is a very transparent way to look at what standards will be tested in which window. So as you're thinking about planning, you can really think about, okay, what is the standard and when will it be assessed and how does that align? And once again, that's an area that Project Success can help you with, that curriculum alignment, looking at the standards and determining when is that priority standard needing to be taught in order to impact student learning. And once again, there are several examples. So this is 3NS2. Here's your Indiana academic standard for grade 3. Here it is broken down as a content connector, broken down one step further. And here in the right-hand column, which assessment it will be on the ISTAR assessment, Part 1, Part 2, or Part 3. And in this case, it is in all 3 parts. Unlike 3NS3, which is not assessed until Part 3. So knowing how to break down when those standards are assessed on the ISTAR is important. And if you need any help, you know how to get a hold of Project Success. Here's just another example, but this is a 3rd grade English language arts example. So in the left-hand column, you have your Indiana academic standards. In your middle column, to the right, you have your content connectors. And then on your far right, you have the windows in which the standard will be assessed. Part 1, Part 2, or Part 3. The last resource for you then is also on the Indiana Department of Education's website is the ISTAR blueprints. And blueprints provide a big picture of the strands, and they assist in prioritizing the curriculum and instructional planning. So it's a very transparent way to let teachers and educators and directors and principals alike know what skills and abilities are required for the assessment. So this is broken down, the blueprints are broken down by all 4 content areas: English language arts, math, science, and social studies. And as you can see, for every grade level, that area is assessed. So ELA, math, science, and social studies. So here is an example of a grade 5 English language arts blueprint. And it lets you know which strands are assessed in English language arts, so reading, literature, and vocabulary, nonfiction and vocabulary, and then writing, everything from genres, research process, as well as the convictions of standard English. And then it lets you know the percentage range, so 30 to 40% of the grade 5 English language arts assessment will be devoted to literature and vocabulary. 30 to 40% of the ISTAR in grade 5 will be devoted to nonfiction and vocabulary, and so on for writing. So it's just a very transparent way for teachers to be aware of the percentage that each strand will be assessed. And once again, this is on the Department of Education's website under ISTAR Blueprints. This is just an example of it. So listening to what the updates and the overview of the ISTAR alternate assessment, it's important to know that you aren't out there all alone, and that there are supports throughout the state for you. So Project Success can provide you support with curriculum mapping, with those priority standards, when you start to break down which are critical standards and which are additional standards. We can help support you with curriculum mapping of those priority standards. We're also going to be able to assist with lesson planning based on standards. I know for some teachers this is a new concept, and we can help lead you through that, taking those standards and providing lesson plans that are balanced, creating that balance for academics and those functional skills together, but having a standard-based balance. We can assist with supporting and writing formative assessments as you start to look at the standards and breaking it down to see how your students are excelling towards those standards. And of course, we are always looking for that best practice, which is that balanced curriculum, academics and functional skills, and how they can be linked together in a balanced curriculum for the good of the individual student. And then, of course, we provide supports based on district needs, because we know that districts have varying needs throughout the state. So you can contact us based on whatever district need or professional development you are working on within your individual district. Or if you have a school improvement plan, we can assist and align professional development for students with significant disabilities towards that school improvement plan and those goals. Once again, the Project Success website can be found at projectsuccessindiana.com. Please make sure you put the Indiana. That will lead you directly to our page. Once you're at our page, if you just simply click Home, that will take you to the front page. There's an overview about Project Success on our front page, as well as updated information. This will also be where we're going to put the WebEx after we're finished here today. So you can check our website to find where we will be throughout the state, any updated information regarding trainings or regional-based trainings, as well as WebEx and any other resources that we have. So make sure you're checking the Project Success website, because we do upload all of the trainings that we do, as well as any updated information, opportunities for growth and learning as well. Once again, you can contact Project Success staff through our email is the best way to reach us. Amy Howey is the Director of Project Success. Her email is ahowey@pcgus.com, or you can contact myself, Meredith Keating Merck, at mkeatingmerck@pcgus.com. We want to thank you for your time today, and please make sure that you check our website for additional information and upcoming trainings that we will be providing. We're going to stay on the line here and continue to answer questions up until 4 o'clock. So please ask questions. Once again, the Department of Education will be providing an update on Thursday, September 24th on the ISTAR. It will include a development of the ISTAR, the item types, the built-in tools that are on this assessment, accommodations for students with limited or no communication, as well as some of the roles and timelines for district test coordinators, as well as district administrators. Some of that timelines and access for that practice test, as well as ISTAR accountability and test security. So make sure that you are checking the Department of Education's alternate assessment website, as well as Learning Connection for updates on when and where to access that webinar, because I think it will provide some additional support on the ISTAR assessment. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time. Again, we'll stay on the line until 4 o'clock answering any questions you might have. Thank you.